Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone is having a nice time. It's a beautiful spring day out here. And I'll just get someone give me some confirmation that the audio is good. Get started on this. I have a lot to share tonight. Don't want to take up all your time, but I want to make sure I have enough time to go through everything. Yeah, it's been a busy time for me with work and working on this, but it's actually been a lot of fun. It's been really exciting for me to see this all come together, and now I get to share it with all of you. So I got some sounds good. All right, let's do this. So today we're going to be talking about version 2 of Nantucket E-Books, and I'd like us to start this presentation by giving a very special thank you to my patrons from Patreon. A thank you to Tom B., Marcus W., and K. If you are interested in becoming a patron, you can go do so at patreon.com/Nantucket E-Books. And if you're interested in supporting the project further, the best way that you can support Nantucket E-Books is by becoming a writer for the platform. Version 2, in particular, has been immensely helped by writers who use the site, who offered encouragement, ideas, and criticism. And that's been very important in getting this version to where it is right now. Authors and readers made this possible. In addition to the authors on the site, people reading beta versions of books and offering their feedback has been very helpful as well. So, if anyone listening to this is interested in using Nantucket E-Books for their own work, I encourage you to please email me at njb@nantucketebooks.com. So, our schedule for tonight is that I'm going to give you an update on things that have been happening since I premiered version 1.51 last year. Then I'll be giving an introduction to version 2. And finally, some other updates to the website, nantucketebooks.com, and we'll finish off with a Q&A session. So if you have any questions while you're watching this, please send them to me. First of all, please like and subscribe to this channel. You can comment in the live chat. You can send me questions by email at njb@nantucketebooks.com. You can also send me questions on my other social media platforms. On Mastodon, you can reach me at nantucketebooks@fosstodon.org. And at Twitter, it's at Nantucket eBooks. So send me questions to any one of those, and I will answer them at the end of this presentation. So, news since the last one. The thing I'm most excited about as I've been working on version 2 has been the attention that Nantucket eBooks has gotten from the Free Software Foundation. I made Nantucket eBooks a free software project earlier last year, and when I say free, I mean free in the sense of software that respects the user's freedom. But the first thing is that Nantucket eBooks is recommended by the Free Software Foundation. There's a link to this page I'm showing you here in the description below. They run a campaign called Defective by Design, which is a campaign against the DRM, the digital restriction management that most ebooks come with. Sets of software that makes the books less useful so that you'll share it less, which they think it makes it a book less profitable. So they recommend my platform among some others. They say Nantucket eBooks is a storefront and publishing platform for independent authors, centered around its own markup language and GNU LibreJS compatible reader and book editor. So part of that is that Nantucket eBooks is compatible with the GNU LibreJS extension, which is available for like the Firefox browser, and that extension will prevent any proprietary software from being run in the browser. The second thing, this was a lot of fun, I got interviewed by the Free Software Foundation, and they put that interview in the Free Software Bulletin. So here's the print edition that I got. This is comes out twice a year from the Software Foundation. And they interviewed me about Nantucket E-Books, and that was a lot of fun. I highly recommend you read the online version. There's a link in the description below. And I talk about some of the development process for the platform. So I'm very glad we got to do that. That was really cool. And finally, this was probably the most fun of all. I got to talk at LibrePlanet 2022. This is a conference that the Free Software Foundation puts on. And I spoke on the topic of building an ethical ebook. Talked about the process of making Nantucket and making it a free software project online. And also some of the philosophical reasons for why I feel that free software was an important part of what I was doing. There's a link to my talk in the description below, and you can find it elsewhere on this YouTube channel. So I was very proud that I got to be a part of that, and I think it went really well. My talk provoked a lot of discussion in the chat room, and I was very glad to see that. So, if anyone's new here, I think it's good to recap this, what my goal is with Nantucket eBooks. The goal is to make it easier for authors to create and share the best ebooks on the planet. Some of the things that really set Nantucket eBooks apart, my ebooks are browser-based, so they don't require any special apps or devices like the Kindle. They're mobile responsive, so when you're viewing it on your device, it's going to look good whether you're on a phone, a tablet, or a laptop or a desktop. My ebooks also feature built-in audiobooks, so if you're reading and it has an audiobook edition, you can go straight into that and listen to it within the ebook itself. And if it's a multi-chapter book, it'll autoplay straight through those files. So I think that's really special, that you can listen to the audiobook within the ebook. They have interactive features such as dark mode, text resizing, and note-taking. I write my ebooks in a fast and lightweight markup language I wrote called Shanty. And Shanty just makes it really easy to write instead of worrying about how it's going to look. The computer takes care of all that, and all I have to do is just focus on the writing. Also makes it really easy to share and collaborate, since it's just a very lightweight text file. The ebooks themselves are easy to share, and they're built on free software. So all the software I use on the platform is licensed under the GPL version 3, and all the documentation uses the GNU Free Documentation license. Okay. So that's what I've been up to, and that's a quick overview of Nantucket eBooks. We'll be looking at some live demonstrations, not only of the ebooks, but how I make them as well. So I look forward to sharing that with you. Version 2, I decided to go for, to go from 1.5.1 to version 2 because this is a major difference. Version 2 is the biggest change to Nantucket eBooks since I introduced it. It's in some ways a very new way of thinking about how the ebooks are shared. Every single aspect of the ebooks and the whole platform has been reviewed and updated. I looked at every single component of the platform so far, and I asked how can this feature be improved to further the mission, or sometimes how can this feature be removed to further my mission of creating ebooks that are really easy to make and share. So I've really scrutinized the entire platform, and the result of that is a tremendous number of improvements. The two that I'm going to focus on is the new file structure for ebooks, and the second is support for much better typography. And I think that'll be very exciting for writers because it's going to take your books to a whole new level. So let's talk about the new file structure first. there are three parts to a Nantucket ebook. Since it's browser-based, first you have the HTML file, which contains the structure of the ebook and all the text. Second, you have a file called a style sheet, which controls the appearance of an ebook, how it's presented on these different devices. And finally, there's the software, which I call Ahab, named for the captain of the ship in Moby Dick. And Ahab is software that controls the interactivity. So when you use dark mode or you're taking notes, Ahab is what's running all of that behind the scenes. So the old way that Nantucket eBooks used to work is that you had all the HTML files for the ebooks, and then each file linked back to the same style sheet and the same copy of Ahab. So if you can imagine, you could have 10 HTML files, but they only have one of the style sheet and one of the software file. So it's all centralized like that. They would all link back together. This is how most web pages work, and it's how they're supposed to work, that you have the style sheet and the JavaScript centralized. So typical way of doing it, but what I found is that it made it kind of hard to share. What you'd usually do, I'll backtrack a second, I had a system where you could download a miniature version of the website, and then you could download the HTML for the ebook, put it in that little mini site, and it would all work. And that was how you would read ebooks offline. And while I was working on version 2, I think the first problem I confronted was how can we make that easier for readers? One thing I wanted to, that I considered was something called base 64 encoding. And what that essentially is you take all your images and all your audio and you convert those into very long strings of letters and numbers. You convert it into text essentially. And the thing you can do with that is you can make the whole ebook fit in a single file. And that means you have fewer files to manage, fewer requests to the server. So instead of asking for a bunch of files, which could take up your bandwidth, you only have one request. And yeah, that's the main appeal of it, is that you can fit everything into one file. The disadvantage is that files become very hard to debug, because on top of the stuff you need to edit to make the software work, you're dealing with these very long strings, which could be thousands and thousands of characters long. And the files become very unwieldy. So I ultimately decided not to go with base 64 encoding. However, I did incorporate it into some aspects of the book. For example, the icons at the top of the tabs, those end up being pretty short strings. So that's base 64. So that's embedded within the ebook itself. Now, here's the way that it's going to work. Essentially, it's like EPUB ebooks. All the necessary files for the ebook are in one folder. So each HTML file is in a folder. Within that folder, it has access to its own copy of the style sheet. So for each ebook, it has its own style sheet and its own software. It does sound redundant, but the benefits for the user have been very clear to me. It's much easier to download for offline reading, because all I have to do is offer one zip folder, and the reader can click on that, get their online copy. I think for authors, it's also going to be much easier to self-host. If you want to host an ebook on your own site, it's all in one folder. You just have to upload that folder, link to it, and you're good to go. And also, I think these are easier to share. So I've been very excited about that. It's the new file structure. But I know maybe some of the authors using the site right now are worried. Are the old links to pages broken? If you have something on Twitter, does that link no longer work? Good news is that link is still going to work. I set up software on the back end that all the old links are going to redirect to the new versions. So all those old links are still going to work for you. Oh, good, getting some questions on Mastodon. That's fun. So, new file structure. The second big update was to the style sheet. This was a complete rewrite of the file that controls the appearance of the ebooks. I started from the ground up. It was just time to reorganize it. And so the result of that has been, first of all, improved mobile responsiveness. These ebooks have never looked better on more devices. You're going to get a great reading experience. If you use an older phone like I do, like I have this iPhone SE, or if you're using a modern iPhone, like the larger ones, or if you're on an iPad, or if you're on a laptop like I am right now, or a desktop, it's going to look really good. And I think that's very exciting. My rewrite was mostly to make it easier to maintain and update the style sheet, and that's really shown itself. And I've also added some metadata into the HTML files, specifically the viewport tag, which I'm very glad to have that in now, because that really does make a difference. The browser handles some of the resizing. So that's been a major difference, is that we have a really great style sheet now that is controlling the appearance. Sorry, just going to check the chat. Okay. Then, so new file structure, new style sheet. Now I wanted to talk about the better typography. Your ebooks are going to look better than ever. And this is going to be a nice little demonstration here. So over here on my website, this is Arrowhead. This is the editor that you can use to preview your ebooks. So let's see here. I'm going to show you how this works. Now, the cool thing with Arrowhead, over here on this side, I can bring up the manual for the markup language. So I'm going to go over here. I've got our advanced typography section. I'm going to click that and show you some examples. There's a lot of habits in writing that come from the days of typewriters. And with ebooks, you want them to look a little better than that. So I'll show you some examples here. Here's the book we're going to run. So, if everyone can see me typing here. This is an ellipsis. Normally you'd write 3 dots, right? Well, when you write 3 dots, you click run. It's actually not 3 dots. It's the actual ellipses character. Another thing you often see in ebooks is straight quotes. So, the quotes on the left and right look the same. That's something from the typewriter days, and what you really want is curly quotes, that it curves on either side. So if you see here, I've got this in quotes. This is a quote, call it. And if I click run, you'll see that it's now curly quotes on the left and right. So it automatically did that for me. And you can see up here, like, I have the little trademark symbol. So if I type Nantucket E-Books, and then I do @TM, so I nest it within the @ symbols, click run, you'll see it made the little trademark symbol up there for me. If you were writing dates like December 31st, you got your ST down here. It's okay, but it could be polished up a little bit. So what you do is, if you nest that within the @ symbols, click run, it turns it into what I learned is called a raised ordinal indicator. So it's up here now. It's a little smaller. You can do other things like this cost, I think I got this right. So GBP, Great British Pounds, and you'll see it put the pound symbol over here. Yeah, I can zoom in, I think, there. So there's GBP. Some other things you could do. In a lot of Hawaiian words, there's something called an okina. So this symbol, we'll put a symbol in. I know I misspelled this, but it goes a certain way. And then another thing that can occur is you can have a word like rock and roll. Now, normally, so by default, it's going to do the curly quotes, but that's not right for rock and roll. What you really want is for this one on the left to also be angled the other way. So I think I do at right at. There you go. So you see they're both angled the same way. So you can see that this adds a new degree of polish to the ebooks. You have a lot more control over how they look, and it just sort of gives it a more literary feel. It's closer to a book where you have typesetting. And so I think it makes me very excited to think about the improvement to the appearance of these books. So that's advanced typography. Go back to my presentation here. Your ebooks are going to look better than ever. So, improved typography support. And that's just the beginning. I could offer some more demonstrations if you have specific questions later. Now let's talk about dark mode, because everybody loves dark mode in these books. If I bring up the demo book here, the Nantucket E-Book platform, it's over here in the menu. Click the light bulb, lights go out. That never gets old. So satisfying. But I had some thoughts. How can we improve that? For one thing, a lot of people have dark mode set within their browser. So there will be a setting in the browser, the operating system, they can click on, and that will, if a website has dark mode set, then it'll respond to that. So let's go over to this tab here in my browser settings, and it says dark mode enable. I click that. So now my browser's in dark mode. And if I go back to my ebook here, it's dark. And I've made some other changes to dark mode too. So I'll take feedback on this if people hate it, but I've decided in dark mode light green for links, and actually red for visited links, tomato red specifically. And of course, when you're in dark mode, hitting the light switch would turn the lights on. So dark mode still works. The light bulb, I should say, still works, even if you're there. So I'll turn and of course I added dark mode for the rest of the site. So even on the main page here, you'll see it. So this is all in the browser-based dark mode will work for the rest of the site, but it's in the ebooks themselves that you'll have the light switch, turn the lights off and on. So I think that's a really cool aspect of it. People love dark mode. Now it's even better. So browser OS compatible dark mode, site wide. Note taking. You've always been able to copy notes within an ebook. I've added some additional features. So if we go down here to the very bottom, while you're working on your notes, you can copy them here. You can also export them and import them. So that will make it much easier for people, and particularly students, to share notes if they need to. Oh. What was that? Sorry, I just wanted to make sure my internet didn't go out. Someone will tell me, I guess. So you can also, this button here, download entire ebook, that will download the zip folder associated with this ebook for offline reading. So improvements to managing notes. And lastly, I wanted to talk about choice a little bit. So start with a little bit of customization. I'm going to disable dark mode here, get the lights back on. let me show you what I have in mind here. So here's your metadata. You can see that by default, these ebooks use a sans serif font. It's whatever sans serif font the browser thinks is appropriate. But that may not fit for every book. So I wanted to give people the option of a serif font if they'd like. So you can type in, so on my left side here, I'm going to add the metadata serif to the side. When I click run, I'll enlarge this a little bit here. You'll see it's this very nice serif font. In particular, this font is called Bitstream Charter. It's an open font. It's an open licensed font that was developed by Matthew Carter, who also created the Georgia and Verdana fonts, which are standard for the web. This is a little bit different from Charter, and so I think it's pretty cool. And even if we don't end up going with Charter, there will be the option to write your books with a serif font as well. I'll show you something else here. If you look at the Shanty markup manual, I wanted it to be, it's a pretty big file, so I wanted it to be easy to navigate. If you look down here, you'll see that there's a little arrow next to it, next to the chapter headings. So if I click that, it'll take me back up to the table of contents. So if I click Advanced Typography, it takes me down. If I click the little arrow, it takes me back up. So it's a lot easier to navigate. I thought, can we incorporate that into Nantucket E-Books? So just to experiment, on the left side here, I can type arrows, click run, and you'll see it's added a little arrow here. So I click that, it'll take me back up to the table of contents. I didn't want to uniformly implement this feature, so I'd like to give people the option to see if it works for them. I think it could be very useful for certain books, particularly longer books like novels. And if I click dark mode here, you see turns green. Have the lights on, goes back to blue. So that's so I look forward to hearing what people think about that. I think it will make books easier to navigate, and that's an important aspect of the books. I forgot to mention that I would really like to, it was one of the authors who is using the site who recommended the dark mode that responds to browser settings. So I'm very appreciative of that. Let me know what you think of serif and the arrows. Finally, I've added a new tag for a license. Up here, you can, on the left side, you can see there's the copyright tag. So if I type that in, copyright 2022 Nicholas Bernhard, that translates over on the ebook side to text copyright 2022 Nicholas Bernhard. But we have these books are meant to be shared, so I figured authors should have the ability to specify a license that says that this book, it's okay to share it. And you do that with license. So the way the license tag works over here is that you put license and then you put the name of the license. This one is Creative Commons by Share-alike. It's a very common license for free culture works where people, they are encouraged to share something. And then I have the link attribute here, and you can include a link to the full text, the legal text of that license. And you see over here that translates to text copyright, and then below that, license with the link. Those are 3 features that I am excited to be sharing with you. And let me know what you think of them. So, to recap for Nantucket eBooks, version 2.0, whole new file structure. It's going to make it much easier to read the books offline, to share them, and for authors to upload them themselves. We have an all-new style sheet, which offers much richer mobile responsiveness and has been rewritten so that it really sets up the updating and maintainability of the style sheet for the years to come. Improved support for typography. So you can really You can really improve the look of the words on the page, or the screen, so to speak. A browser and OS compatible dark mode that is site-wide, so it incorporates the whole site. Improved notes management. An optional serif font if authors want it. Optional navigation links on chapter headings. And a new tag to specify the license for an ebook's text. That is Nantucket eBooks version 2. Now, there were a few features that were removed. That was an important part of it. As Terry Davis said, when you scale down, it doesn't get good, it gets better. So I've taken out the bookmark button, and that's because now it's going to automatically save your spot in the book every 5 seconds. So you don't need the bookmark button there. I've removed the offline reader folder from the site because now you can just download the ebook. You don't need an offline reader. And then lastly, I have removed the sound effects from the ebooks. So it used to be that if you hit the buttons in the menu, they would make certain noises. That's a feature that I was inspired by the old CD-ROM games of my childhood. If you grew up back in the 90s, you can remember that CD-ROMs interactivity was the big buzzword of the time. And back then, if you clicked a button in a program, you knew it because it would go or zzz, it would make some noise, and you really felt like you were interacting with it. So I wanted that same feeling when I was creating Nantucket eBooks, but hard to say how much that really adds to the ebook experience. So for now, sound effects are going away. And so those are some of the features that have been removed in version 2. That's really all I have to share. I'm really excited to see how authors take advantage of these features and their feedback. Love to hear what readers have to say. You're going to be seeing a lot more ebooks uploaded to the site in the coming months. And you'll be seeing more presentations about the ebooks we have to offer. But before we get to questions, I have one more thing that I wanted to share. This is a book that was submitted by one of the authors who is using the site. And I read it and I thought it was really excellent. It's the kind of work it's the kind of quality that I really want, that I've really hoped to have on the site. And I asked him if I could premiere it during this live stream presentation. He said yes. So that book is True Love's Kiss. It's a short story by Riley Duffield. And it's a very interesting fantasy short story. As you can tell by the title, it is sort of a take on the Frog Prince folktale, but it goes in a very different direction. And I thought it has really excellent prose. He works with they work with a very interesting artist. I really like the cover art. So I am excited to share that here. And you can find this book featured on the front page of the site and in the featured section. And I'll keep it there for the next few weeks. But I hope you'll give it a try. It's a great representation and a great way to explore the new features of version 2 of Nantucket eBooks. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank you all for watching. You can support Nantucket eBooks by becoming a writer for the platform. And you could also become a patron at patreon.com/Nantucket eBooks. And so with that, we'll get into Q&A. As I said before, you can ask questions in the YouTube chat, email me at njb@nantucketebooks.com. I also have my Mastodon and Twitter there below. So let's see what sort of questions we have here. In the YouTube chat, what about different type styles? So as I said before, as far as like really different fonts, you certainly could add in different fonts if you wanted. The way this works again is if you're over here and you're writing your book, you put double exclamation point, serif, and so that will put it into the Bitstream charter font here. If I take that out, goes back to a sans serif font. You definitely could, if there's interest in having even more fonts available. I definitely could do that. Just let me know. I'd be happy to work with you on that. So let's check over here. On Twitter. I'm very glad we got some questions. That's a lot of fun. Well, that's... Oh, there we go. Okay, let's see on Mastodon. We got some questions here. All right. Let's see here. So I answered the question about how the advanced typography works. I've been manually converting my mic down. Okay, so yes, hopefully this will save people some time in terms of not having to go through the whole body of text and make the changes. One big help with Shanty is that when you're writing in HTML, the hypertext markup language, if you want to change your quotes into curly quotes, that ends up taking quite a bit of time. You have to write in the special character each time. Here it's going to go through and make some educated guesses about what to change. There are edge cases they have to be aware of, but for the most part, I found it's really helpful. Any other questions? Just let me know. I'll try to show you some other things here. If I go to help, as I mentioned, you have the whole thing. You have the manual available right here in the editor. So we'll go back to advanced typography, and I have a whole table here. Here's a good example. So when you're writing, technically the symbols for feet and inches need to be straight quotes. So if you're writing 2 feet like that, normally I would make that a curly quote. If you want to force it that way, what you do is at, S for straight, single quote, at, and then that'll make that into a straight quote if you want to say something like 2 feet. I'll do another one here. So the copyright symbol is, I do at copy, and I'll say 2022, Nicholas Bernhard. And here's another one that's important for writers, M dashes and N dashes. You shouldn't be using just a hyphen for everything. That's a habit that I'm trying to break. So from what I've read, M dashes are for situations where speech is being interrupted. If someone's being interrupted, then you put an M dash. If they trail off, you could use an ellipses. So someone wrote down, I just thought I'd, and then normally you'd put a hyphen, but it should be an M dash, so it's at, EM, at. And then if I run it, let's see how these all look. Where was I? Down here. So there's our straight quote for 2. I'll try to enlarge the text here. So you see it's a straight quote for 2 feet. There's our copyright symbol. And then here is you can see it's an M dash. It's a little bit longer. So that's the sort of thing that you can really add in. And I think it does add a lot to your text. On Mastodon, got some more questions here. Damia Ray says, it might be worth checking how this looks to people with color blindness. I believe red and green is among the most common forms. And I can't speak to whether that's correct. If it is, then those would probably not be the best colors for links. I think that's an excellent suggestion. I will look into maybe identifying some better colors to use. But I'll definitely look into that. And I think maybe a setting for people with color blindness would be a great asset to Nantucket E-Books. So thank you very much for that, Damia. And Riley Duffield says, thanks for featuring my story. I wanted to ask, what if there were a good orc? Because Lord of the Rings and other similar stories haven't explored this. I think that is a great idea for a story. I didn't intend for it to be a Princess and the Frog adaptation, but that makes sense for the story too. I like building on our shared cultural heritage of public domain works. And thank you very much for that, Riley. It's an excellent short story, and I do hope if people are into fantasy fiction that they give it a shot. I think that's about it for now. Let me check the chat one more time. Okay. So, if you have further questions after this, just send them to me by email. I love talking to people about this stuff. And a big thank you to the authors and the readers who have helped me get to this point. And for people who've lent me devices to do beta testing, that's been a lot of help. And for people's moral support and encouragement. It's meant a lot. And I look forward to continued improvements to these ebooks, which I really feel are the best out there right now. So I look forward to, hope you all stay engaged, and I'll engage with you as I continue to develop it. I hope you all have a good night, and stay safe out there.